Jinho sits in his office. The room is dimly lit, only a desk lamp casting a soft glow on the polished surface of his desk. He's just finished a conversation, a short, businesslike conversation with a man he hasn't seen in months. A man he considers his main and only truly dangerous rival. His name is Taeyong. They are not enemies in the classic sense of the word. Their relationship is more complex. They are like two tigers sharing a mountain. They don't seek to rid themselves of each other, but they are constantly competing. Every encounter is a battle of wits, wills, and a test of who will be more cunning, who will anticipate the other's moves. And today, after several months of silence, Taeyong called. His voice was calm and friendly. Too friendly. Jinho, it's been a while. I missed you. Let's meet tomorrow night. At Sakura's. Let's talk like old friends. Jinho places his phone on the table. His face is expressionless, but inside, everything is tense. His mind is already analyzing the situation, parsing every word, every intonation. Old friends. They were never friends. Their world is one of shadows, agreements, and a constant struggle for influence. In their world, nothing is just like that. There are no meetings to talk. Every gesture, every word, every sentence is a move in a complex chess game. An offer to meet is a challenge. The choice of restaurant is a message. Sakura's is neutral, expensive territory. This means Taeyong wants a conversation, not an immediate conflict. But what kind of conversation could there be? Jinho leans back in his chair, closing his eyes. He mentally runs through all the possible reasons that could have led Taeyong to make this call. A direct attack? No. That would be too rude, too risky for both of them. It would violate all the unwritten rules of their world and bring trouble on everyone. So something else, something more sophisticated. And then a thought, cold and honed like a blade, pierces his consciousness. It's so simple, it's ingenious. Food. They'll sit at the same table, dine, drink. The perfect moment to stage an accident. Not murder, that's too high profile, too dangerous. But poisoning. Serious, debilitating poisoning that will knock a man out of action for weeks, even a month. A month. That's an eternity in their business. In a month, they can snatch up lucrative contracts, lure away key people, and weaken the enemy's structures to a critical state. Taeyong wants to neutralize them without launching an open attack. Baitvi. It's smart. It's his style. But instead of fear or anger, Jinho feels a strange, almost predatory excitement. Excitement. The game is becoming truly interesting. Taeyong is challenging him, and Jinho accepts. Moreover, he understands that this is not just a threat, but a brilliant opportunity. A mirror opportunity. If Taeyong plans to poison him, why not do the same to him? Get ahead of him. Strike first. They think alike. They live by the same rules. And now, at this very moment, sitting in his office, Taeyong is probably pondering the exact same plan. Without realizing it, they have become mirror images of each other. Both have decided to uphold the traditions of their hidden hostility. Both see this dinner as a chance to settle everything with one precise, silent blow. They'll both show up for the meeting, smiling, chatting about trivial matters. But each will have one question on their mind. Did my plan work? They'll both sit and wait for their opponent to take a bite of the piece made especially for them. It'll be a duel where the weapon is food and the battlefield is the restaurant's snow-white tablecloth. All that remained was to find the executor, the one who would serve this weapon. The cook. The head chef of Sakura's restaurant was a woman, a young black woman he'd only heard of in passing. They said she was talented, ambitious, and most importantly, unconnected to their world. The perfect candidate. An outsider. She didn't care about their squabbles. She cared about the money. And Jinho had the money. He'd pay her so much that she could forget about work forever. He just needed to offer her a deal. And he's sure Taeyong is thinking the same thing at this very moment. The only question is which one of them will make the first move. Jinho slowly rises from the table. His movements are deliberate and precise. The plan is crystallizing in his head, taking on clear outlines. He can't let Taeyong get ahead of him. He has to act today. Now, he leaves the office, his footsteps silent on the deep carpet. He doesn't say a word to his driver, simply nods to indicate they're on their way. The car, a dark, expensive sedan, slid smoothly away from the entrance. Jinho looks out the window at the evening city. The lights flicker like stars in another alien world. His world has now narrowed to one restaurant, one kitchen, and one girl. He had to be first. He had to meet the cook, offer her terms, and win her loyalty. Money would solve everything. It always did in such matters. Tomorrow evening will determine which of them will emerge victorious from the restaurant. Who will smile, knowing their enemy is out of the game for a month? Who will reap the benefits while the other suffers from pain and weakness? The car stops in front of a discreet but expensive building. The sign Sakura's glows dimly. Jinho gets out, adjusting the sleeve of his jacket. He goes inside. The evening at the restaurant is just beginning. The air is filled with the soft aromas of expensive food and faint music. A few patrons are quietly chatting at the tables. Jinho feels out of place here, but his confidence and expensive suit are irresistible. The administrator, a young man in impeccable uniform, immediately approaches him. "Good evening, sir. Table for one?" "No," Jinho replies, casting a calm but commanding glance around the room. "I need to speak with your chef, with Ayla." A look of mild surprise crossed the administrator's face. "The chef is very busy in the kitchen. Perhaps there's something I can do to help?" "No." Jinho's voice is soft, but there's a hint of steel in it. "My question is personal. Please ask her to leave. It won't take long." Something in the guest's tone and posture prevents the administrator from arguing. He nods. "Of course, sir. Just a moment." He moves deeper into the restaurant. Jinho waits, standing in the middle of the room. He doesn't sit. His posture suggests that his time is precious, and he's used to being obeyed. A few minutes pass. The kitchen door opens, and a girl emerges. She's short, with dark skin and alert, intelligent eyes. She's wearing a white chef's coat and holding a tea towel. She looks tired but collected. It's Ayla. She walks up to Jinho, looking at him appraisingly. "I'm Ayla. You wanted to see me?" "Yes." Jinho points to a secluded table in the corner. "Can we talk for a minute? Confidentially." Ayla frowns slightly, but nods. They approach and sit opposite each other. She places the towel on her lap, her posture expressing slight tension. She doesn't know what to expect from this stranger. Jinho places his hands on the table, his movements calm and measured. "I have a business proposal for you," he begins without preamble. "What offer?" Ayla asks. Her voice is even, but there's a hint of wariness in it. "Tomorrow night I'll be having dinner here with someone. My business partner. I need you to spoil his dish a little." Ayla frowned, not understanding. "Ruined? What do you mean?" "Literally. So he'd poison himself. Not too badly, I'm not that cruel. But serious enough to put him out of action for a long time. A month, at least." Ayla's eyes widen. She leans back in her chair, as if recoiling from him. Her face expresses shock and disbelief. "Are you suggesting that I poison the guest?" she almost whispers, looking around. "Exactly," Jinho calmly confirms. "Are you crazy?" Her voice trembled with indignation and fear. "If someone gets food poisoning in my restaurant, I'll be fired that very day. I could get sued. My reputation would be ruined. I'll never be able to work as a cook again." Jinho listens to her outburst of emotions with unflappable calm. He lets her speak. "I understand your concerns," he says when she falls silent, breathing heavily. "And I'm ready to compensate you for all the risks. I'll pay you such a sum that you'll never have to work for anyone again in your life. You'll be able to go anywhere, open your own restaurant, or just live your life to your heart's content. Money will solve all your problems." Ayla looks at him, an internal struggle raging in her eyes. Fear battles greed, caution battles temptation. What amount?" She finally exhales. Jinho names a number that takes Ayla's breath away. It's more than she could have earned in 20 years of hard work in the kitchen. This is money that could truly change her life. Buy freedom, make her dreams come true. She's silent, processing what she's heard. Her mind is racing, weighing the risks and potential rewards. She's afraid of making a mistake. What if this is some kind of test? What if this man is a secret client or a journalist investigating the establishment's integrity? But something in his cool confidence, his expensive clothes, the very absurdity of the situation tells her it's not so. This is real. And another feeling stirs deep within her. Excitement. A frantic interest in what she's doing now. She's just a cook. Her life is recipes, oven temperature, and the freshness of ingredients. And now she's being asked to become a participant in something dangerous, almost detective-like. But how? She begins again, more quietly. How can I do this? If he's poisoned, there will be tests, examinations. Make it look like an accident, Jinho explains. Just food poisoning. It happens even in the best restaurants. No one will blame you personally. I'll make sure management doesn't have any questions for you. You're just preparing food. Sometimes the ingredients aren't the best quality. It happens. He looks at her directly, his gaze heavy and piercing. So, are you in or not? His voice doesn't rise, but it carries a final, merciless clarity. Isla bites her lip. She looks at her hands, at the small scars from knives and stove burns. She remembers her small apartment, the rent bill, the tiredness in her bones at the end of a long day. And then she imagines a different life. A life without debt, without having to get up at 5 a.m. A life where she is her own boss. Something inside her clicks. Fear recedes, giving way to determination. Okay, she says, her voice firm now. I agree. A small smile of satisfaction appeared on Jinho's lips. Excellent. Tomorrow we'll order 2 identical dishes, a seafood salad. You'll understand which of us is your client. I trust your professionalism. Don't let me down. He stands, nods to her, and without another word, turns and leaves. Ayla remains seated at the table. Her hands tremble slightly. She has just agreed to a crime. She is about to deliberately poison a man. The realization hits her with renewed force, sending a wave of nausea through her. But the thought of money, the amount he named, drowns out both the nausea and the fear. This is a chance. The only chance in her life, and she can't miss it. She slowly rises and returns to the kitchen. Her colleagues glance at her curiously, but no one dares ask. Ayla silently approaches her workstation and picks up a knife. The familiar feel of the handle in her palm calms her somewhat. She tries to focus on the current orders, but her thoughts keep returning to the strange man and his offer. She doesn't yet know that this conversation was just the beginning. About an hour passes. Ayla gradually comes to her senses, immersing herself in the routine of preparing for closing. Suddenly, the kitchen door opens again, and the manager appears. A mixture of confusion and curiosity is on his face. Ayla, they're asking you to leave again. There's another man there. He says it's urgent. Ayla freezes, knife in hand. A cold wave of fear runs down her spine. Has the first man changed his mind, or is it someone else? She slowly puts down the knife, wipes her hands on her apron, and goes back out into the hall. Another man sits at the same table in the corner. He's also dressed in an expensive suit, but his posture, his demeanor, everything speaks of a different breed. If the first was cold and reserved like ice, this one radiates energy and arrogance. He sits sprawled in his chair, looking at her with an appraising, slightly disdainful gaze. It's Taeyang. Sit down, he says, without introducing himself or expressing any gratitude for interrupting her work. Ayla sits silently, her chest tightening with a sense of foreboding. Are you the chef? He asks again, even though he knows the answer perfectly well. Yes. Ayla. Okay, Ayla, listen carefully. I don't have time for idle chatter. I'll be having dinner here tomorrow. There'll be someone with me. I need you to slip something into his food, to seriously poison him. For a month, no less. I'll pay. Name your price. Ayla listens to him and she gets a sense of déjà vu. The same words, the same plan, the same idea, only presented in a rude, unceremonious tone. Her mind races. So this is what they are like, these 2 business partners. They want to destroy each other, and both have come to her as a mere tool. And at that moment, her initial fear gives way to cold rage. Who is this guy talking to her like that? Like a servant? Like a thing? But she doesn't show her feelings. Her face remains impassive. Are you suggesting I poison my guest? she asks again, buying time to make sure she heard correctly. Exactly. Don't make it complicated. Just tell me how much you want. Ayla looks at him. Her choice, which only a moment ago seemed so difficult, suddenly becomes crystal clear. The first man, Jinho, treated her with respect. He offered a deal. This one is simply trying to buy her, like someone buying a piece of meat at the market. And his arrogance is off-putting. But money is the same. And she can't just refuse such a person. It could be dangerous. I need to think about it, she says, her voice surprisingly calm. This is a big decision. Taeyong frowns. He clearly doesn't like this delay. Think fast. I need an answer. You'll get it, Ayla says. Standing up. Tomorrow, when your dishes are on the table. She sees irritation flash in his eyes, but he holds it in. He mutters something under his breath, and without saying goodbye, turns and leaves. Ayla stands in the middle of the hall, watching him go. Now she understands everything. Completely. These two, Jinho and this insolent guy, are enemies. They both want to use her to eliminate each other. Tomorrow they'll both be here, and she'll have to choose which one to help. But the choice has essentially already been made. She will help Jinho, the first one, the one who showed her basic respect. She returns to the kitchen. Her colleagues are almost finished and getting ready to go home. Ayla automatically helps them clean up, her mind elsewhere. She never imagined her ordinary workday would end like this, with 2 criminal proposals and the need to make a fateful decision. When Ayla finally leaves the restaurant, it's already dark outside. She walks to the bus stop, wrapped in a light coat. The evening is cool, but she barely feels the cold. Her mind is still processing what just happened. She boards a nearly empty bus and presses her forehead against the cold glass. Now, in silence and solitude, the fear returns. What has she gotten herself into? She's a cook. Her job is to bring people pleasure through food. And now she plans to use food as a weapon. She plans to intentionally harm someone. The thought of it sends a wave of shame through her. But then she remembers the arrogant face of the second man, Taeyong. He looked down on her. He talked to her like a dog. And Jinho acted like a gentleman. He proposed a deal, not gave an order. You can't please everyone, she thinks, watching the flickering lights. Whoever offers the most gets what they want. And in this case, they've offered the same, so the choice isn't determined by money, but by attitude. And she also understands something important. No one owes anyone anything. Especially not in their world, the world she's just accidentally stepped into. She comes into her small, modestly furnished apartment. The familiar surroundings now seem alien to her. She turns on the light, but doesn't light the stove to cook dinner. She has no appetite. Instead, she sits down at the table, takes out a notepad and pen. She needs to figure out how to do this. Technically, the first thought that comes to mind is to use spoiled food. Get hold of rotten fish or stale seafood. But she immediately dismisses this idea. It's unreliable. Some people have very strong stomachs and immune systems. Mild poisoning can pass in a couple of days, but Jinho needed results for a month. This method could prove unsuccessful. We need something more effective, something guaranteed, and preferably something that won't just upset your stomach, but rather cause a complex reaction that can be attributed to a severe allergy or an accidental food combination. She begins to mentally review her knowledge of cooking, foods, and their properties. She recalls lectures at culinary school, books on dietetics, and suddenly an idea dawns on her. Allergens. Strong allergens. If a person has a hidden allergy they're unaware of, or if they're given a large dose of the allergen, the reaction could be very severe, and it would look like a tragic accident, not intentional poisoning. She recalls that one of the most powerful and common allergens is peanuts, but using them is risky. Their smell and taste are too distinctive. Something more neutral is needed. And then she thinks about citrus fruits. More specifically, about the zest. Orange zest contains a huge amount of essential oils, which can cause severe allergic reactions. It can be finely grated and added to a sauce or salad dressing. It will impart a light citrus flavor that would be appropriate with a seafood dish, and no one will suspect anything. But allergies alone may not be enough. You need to be on the safe side. And then she remembers spoiled seafood. Not just stale, but improperly stored. For example, if shrimp or scallops sit overnight in a warm room rather than in the refrigerator, dangerous bacteria will begin to multiply. Combined with an allergic reaction, this can cause a double whammy, a powerful immune response, and serious food poisoning. Yes, it will work. An allergy will cause swelling, breathing problems, and a rash. Spoiled seafood will cause vomiting, diarrhea, and fever. Together, these are guaranteed to send someone to the hospital for a long time. The plan is ready. Technically, she knows what to do. All that remains is to put it into practice. She goes to bed, but sleep won't come. The faces of two men appear before her. Jinho's face, calm and confident, and Taeyong's face, arrogant and rude. She feels a slight twinge of shame at deceiving one of them, giving them false hope. But then she remembers his tone again and calms down. It's his own fault. You have to find a way to connect with people. He hasn't learned that. Now he'll learn a lesson. Finally, towards morning, she falls into a short, restless sleep. Meanwhile, Jinho returns to his office. He's pleased with himself. The first move has been made, and he's confident he's been faster and smarter than Taeyong. He sits down in his chair, pours himself a whiskey, and takes a sip. The plan is set in motion. But despite his outward calm, he couldn't shake a slight feeling of uncertainty. What if Taeyong had beaten him to it? What if he, too, had found a way to reach the chef? What if he'd offered her more? This thought gnaws at him. He can't rely on luck alone. He needs to be 100% sure. He picks up the phone. The restaurant manager he spoke with gave him Ayla's cell phone number without asking, in exchange for a good tip. Jinho dials the number. The phone rings several times before she picks it up. Her voice sounds sleepy. Hello? This is Jinho, the one you spoke to at the restaurant today. There's a short pause on the other end of the line. Yes, I remember. I want to make sure everything is okay. Have you figured out how to do this? Yes. Ayla's voice becomes more collected. Everything is still on. I won't let you down. You'll definitely be satisfied. He hears confidence in her voice. It calms him down. Okay, see you tomorrow. He hangs up. Now he's calm. Ayla is on his side. The plan will work. He finishes his whiskey and looks out the dark window. Tomorrow, Taeyong will get what he deserves. Meanwhile, Taeyong is sitting in his own office. His office is larger and more posh than Jinho's. Everything here screams money and power. He just returned from the restaurant and is also pleased. He's confident that his pressure and offer will leave this cook with no choice. Who would refuse that kind of money? Especially some kitchen handyman. A sinister, smug smile plays across his face. He looks at the city lights and imagines Jinho writhing in pain tomorrow, while he, Taeyong, rubs his hands with glee as he takes over his business. False confidence blinds him. If he were a little more polite, a little more respectful of people, especially women, perhaps Ayla would choose him. But his arrogance is his Achilles's. Please heal, and he will soon realize this. But it will be too late. Morning comes, the day when everything must be decided. Ayla wakes with the first rays of the sun. Her sleep was short and restless, but when she opens her eyes, determination is evident. Fear and doubt are a thing of the past. Today, she must act. She arrives at work before everyone else. The restaurant is empty and quiet. She walks into the kitchen, turns on the lights, and begins preparing. Tonight is the most important evening of her career, perhaps of her life. She works methodically and meticulously. First, she checks all routine deliveries. Vegetables, herbs, fresh seafood. Everything must be of impeccable quality. She can't risk poisoning anyone else. The risk must be minimized. Then she begins preparing the special ingredients. She takes a small batch of fresh shrimp and scallops. Instead of refrigerating them, she carefully wraps them in parchment paper and leaves them in the warmest corner of the pantry, next to the oven. By evening, they'll be perfect weapons. Then she takes a fresh orange and a fine grater. She peels the orange zest, only the outer colored layer, where the essential oils are concentrated. She does this carefully, so as not to touch the bitter white peel. The result is a small pile of bright orange, fragrant zest. She packs it into a small container and tucks it away in her personal cabinet. It's ready. She feels a strange calm. She's thought it all through. She knows what to do. The guilt for deceiving Taeyong is still there, but it's muted by the thought of his rudeness. In their world, this is normal. She repeats to herself like a mantra. She's simply playing by their rules. Meanwhile, Jinho and Taeyong go about their day as usual. Each of them goes about their business, giving orders, holding meetings, but their thoughts constantly return to the evening. Each is confident they are in control. Each thinks they are one step ahead. They call each other during the day to confirm the meeting. So, 8 o'clock at Sakura's, Taeyong clarifies, a hint of mockery in his voice. Yes, Jinho answers, his tone dispassionate. I'll be waiting. They hang up. Both smile. Both think this is the last phone conversation in which one of them feels healthy and strong. Evening. The restaurant Yu Sakura is gradually filling with customers. The lights are dim, the atmosphere calm and refined. At precisely 8 o'clock in the evening, Jinho and Taeyong appear at the door. They enter almost simultaneously. They smile at each other and shake hands. Their greetings are full of feigned cordiality. Jinho, long time no see, Taeyong exclaims, clapping him on the shoulder. You look great. Taeyong, it's good to see you, Jinho replies, his smile a little more reserved. You're not complaining either. Their smiles never reach their eyes. Their gazes are cold and appraising. They walk to a pre-booked table at the back of the room and sit down. The show begins. They talk about business, mutual acquaintances, the latest news. Their conversation is light and casual, but beneath this lightness lies a seriousness. They don't listen to each other. Their thoughts are preoccupied with other things. They wait. Waiting for their opponent to eat the poisoned food. Waiting for him to start feeling ill. In the kitchen, Ayla works at a frantic pace. She tries to process all the other orders as quickly as possible so she can focus on the main thing. Her heart is pounding. She constantly glances at the door, waiting for the waiter to bring that one order. And here he comes. The waiter hands her the check. Table 7. 2 salads with tiger prawns and scallops. Ayla takes the check. Her fingers tremble slightly. She takes a deep breath, steeling herself. It's time. She begins cooking. Her movements are precise and measured, despite her inner tremors. She prepares 2 salads simultaneously. For Jinho, she uses only the freshest, choicest ingredients. For Taeyong, she pulls out some spoiled seafood from its hiding place. It has a slight, barely perceptible off flavor, which she masks with aromatic herbs and lemon juice. Then she adds a pinch of orange zest to the dressing. The salads look absolutely identical, fresh, bright, and delicious. The challenge is to keep the dish delicious. It shouldn't arouse suspicion from the very first bite. It must be flawless until the poison begins its work. She places the prepared salads on a tray and hands them to the waiter. Her part of the job is done. Now, can do is wait. The waiter approaches the table and places 2 identical plates in front of the men. The salad looks magnificent. Juicy shrimp, tender scallops, fresh herbs, and a light citrus herb dressing. It looks delicious, Taeyong remarks, inhaling the aroma with gusto. Yes, Jinho agrees. The food here is always good. Both of them carefully examine their plates. Their eyes search for the slightest detail that might give away a trick. But they are not chefs. They see only a perfectly prepared dish. They begin to eat. Jinho eats slowly, with relish, but his entire being is tense with anticipation. Taeyong eats with great gusto, his arrogance making him feel secure. He's confident his plan will work. Ayla stands by the small window set into the kitchen door. She can't take her eyes off table number 7. Her palms are damp with sweat. She watches Taeyong happily stuffing piece after piece into his mouth. 5 minutes pass, 10, and then it begins. At first, Taeyong simply choked. A small pepper seed, he thought. He cleared his throat and took a sip of water. But the cough didn't subside. On the contrary, it grew worse. Something He begins, but can't finish. His face begins to turn red. Red spots appear on his neck and cheeks. He begins to have difficulty breathing. He clutches his throat. What's wrong with you? Jinho asks, his voice filled with false concern. I don't know, Taeyong croaks. Bad. Really bad. At that moment, the spoiled seafood kicks in. A sharp, cramping pain shoots through his stomach. He doubles over, groaning. His body breaks out in a cold sweat. Waiter! Jinho's voice is loud and commanding, drawing the attention of the entire room. There's someone sick here! Call an ambulance, ye! A commotion breaks out in the restaurant. Employees rush over. Someone calls an ambulance. They try to help Taeyong sit more comfortably, but he's already nearly losing consciousness from the pain and labored breathing. Ayla watches this scene and is overcome by a strange feeling, a mixture of horror and triumph. She's done it. The plan worked. 15 minutes later, the ambulance arrives. The paramedics take Taeyong away on a stretcher. Jinho stands and watches them go, his face impassive. He leaves the restaurant, takes out his phone, and calls his man at the hospital. How is he? He asks briefly. Severe poisoning combined with an acute allergic reaction. The doctors say he'll be on IVs for at least 2 weeks, possibly a month. Jinho hangs up. The plan is accomplished. He won this round. Before getting into the car, he glances casually into the restaurant kitchen. Through the transparent window in the door, he sees Ayla standing there, looking straight at him. A slight, barely noticeable smile is on her face. She's glad she didn't let him down. Jinho gives her an almost imperceptible nod. He thanks her. Then he gets into the car and drives away. The cold night air hits his face. He takes a deep breath. He won this duel. Taeyong is defeated. But Jinho isn't fooling himself. Their game is far from over. It's only just begun. But today's victory is his. 3 days after the incident at the restaurant, Ayla's phone vibrated, revealing an unknown number. Her heart sank. She had dreaded the call almost as much as she had anticipated it. Hello? Her voice trembled. This is Jinho. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, cafe by the bridge. Come alone. He hung up without giving her a chance to answer. The order had been given. Ayla didn't sleep a wink all night. She woke up with shaking hands. She put on her simplest, most inconspicuous outfit, dark jeans and a gray sweater, pulled up her hood, and drove to the other side of town. The Bridge Cafe turned out to be a small, hidden place with a couple of tables and the smell of old coffee. She walked in and saw it right away. Jinho was sitting in the corner, his back to the wall, from where he could see both the entrance and the window. He was alone. In front of him stood an untouched espresso. Ayla timidly approached and sat down opposite him. He looked at her silently, his gaze heavy and appraising. Weren't you being followed? He asked without preamble. I don't think so. I was on a connecting flight and looked out the window. It seemed like there was no one there. He nodded, satisfied with her answer. Then, from his inside jacket pocket, he pulled out a thin brown envelope and placed it on the table without moving it toward her. The first part, half of our total. The second part will be when Taeyong is officially transferred to a rehabilitation center. That will confirm he's out of the game for the long haul. Ayla slowly reached out and took the envelope. It was tight and thick. She didn't count it, but simply shoved it into her capacious bag. Her fingers trembled. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. It's a deal. His voice was even, but not rough. He looked at her carefully. You don't sleep well. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. She nodded, unable to lie. I'm having nightmares. I think I can smell this. The smell of rotten shrimp. She said this and was immediately startled by her own frankness. But Jinho didn't wince in disgust. His face remained impassive. This will pass. Conscience is a luxury not everyone can afford. You have chosen survival. He took a sip of cold coffee and stood up. Leave first in 10 minutes. And don't come back the same way. Ayla nodded, and clutching the bag containing the envelope tightly, stepped outside. The sunlight seemed unnaturally bright to her. She felt not only the weight of the money in her bag, but also a strange, aching feeling. He'd noticed she hadn't been sleeping well. That fleeting, insignificant comment suddenly seemed like a drop of humanity in the icy ocean of his world. A week passed. Ayla tried to return to normal life, but the shadow of Sakura's hung over her. One evening, as she was taking out the trash into the restaurant's back patio, a stranger approached her. A tall, stocky man in a sports jacket. His smile was unpleasant. Ayla, chef? Yes, why? She felt a cold fear. I want to talk about the evening when Mr. Taeyong became ill. My boss is very interested in details. What exactly did he eat? Maybe you noticed something in the kitchen. Something unusual? He stepped closer. Ayla retreated, her back against the cold wall. I don't know. Everything was as usual. Maybe he had an allergy. Perhaps, the man chuckled. But we want to make sure. In person. Come with me. We'll clear everything up in a couple of hours. He grabbed her by the elbow. His grip was iron. Ayla cried out in pain and fear. At that moment, a shadow appeared from the darkness. A second man, whom she hadn't noticed at first, approached from the side. And suddenly, from around the corner, a dark sedan rolled up smoothly and silently. The back door opened, and Jinho stepped out. He was alone. His face was stony in the streetlight. Let her go, he said quietly. His voice was quiet, but it held such power that the man's hands loosened of their own accord. Mr. Jinho, Jinho interrupted. He came closer. Return to your master and tell him this. If anyone looks in that girl's direction again, or even sneezes in her direction, I will personally visit Master Park, and we will discuss his inappropriate interest. Does he understand? The man turned pale and nodded quickly. Got it all. Then disappear. The two men practically ran, disappearing into the darkness of the alley. Ayla stood trembling, clutching her shoulders. She stared at Jinho with wide eyes. How did you find out? I've ordered my man to keep an eye on you, for your own safety, he answered simply. Taeyong's unconscious, but his men aren't all sitting idle. And Park? His rival, who decided now was a good time to dig into this matter. He came closer. There was no anger in his eyes, only tired determination. You're part of this now, like a stone thrown into the water. The waves spread far and wide. You have to be more careful. Why? Ayla breathed out. Why did you come yourself? You could have just called your people. Jinho thought for a second, as if he was looking for an answer himself. Because it's my duty, he finally said. I got you involved, so I'm responsible. He opened the car door. Get in. I'll take you home, and starting today, you'll follow the new rules. That evening, sitting in the car next to him, Ayla realized his protection wasn't just a calculation. It was something more. And this something both frightened and attracted her. A sense of duty gnawed at Ayla. The money laid dead weight, and the image of Jinho appearing in the dark alley wouldn't leave her mind. He had saved her, personally. And she felt she owed him more than just silent submission. She decided to do what she did best. Cook him food, not as an order, but as a gesture. As gratitude. She found his number and sent a short text. I'd like to thank you. Can I bring you lunch tomorrow? The answer came an hour later. Office, 14 Oma. The next day, she spent the entire morning cooking. She didn't do anything fancy. She made what she herself loved to eat as a child. After a hard day, braised beef with ginger and soy sauce, tender rice pudding with jasmine tea. Simple, filling, with soul. She arrived at his office promptly at 2. His secretary, a stern-looking man, meekly ushered her into his office. Jinho was sitting at his desk, immersed in paperwork. Seeing her with a large transparent box in her hands, he raised his eyebrows. What is this? Lunch, Ayla said, placing the box on the edge of his desk. As a token of gratitude, for helping me out back then. He looked at the box with slight bewilderment, as if he had been given an alien artifact. You could have just bought something. It's not the same, she objected. It's made by me. He slowly opened the lid. The warm, rich aroma of stewed meat and ginger filled the room. He stared at the food in silence, then at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Some icy shell cracked. Thank you, he said quietly. It was the first sincere thank you she had ever heard from him. Please, she smiled and, feeling that her mission was accomplished, turned to leave. Ayla! She turned around. He was looking at her, and his gaze was different now. Not commanding, but interested. Would you like to join me? I can't eat all this alone. They ate together, sitting at his huge oak table. He ate slowly, savoring every bite. It's very tasty, he admitted, and his voice sounded genuinely surprised. Real, not like in restaurants. At that moment, he wasn't a mafia boss, just a tired man who appreciated a simple home-cooked meal. And Ayla saw that man in him. After the lunch visit, their relationship changed. Jinho began calling more often. At first, he just checked if everything was okay. Then their conversations became longer. One day he said, Your naivety is dangerous. You need to learn the basics of safety. Come to the gym on Parkovaya tomorrow. I'll teach you! It sounded like an order, but it contained a different meaning. Concern. The gym turned out to be an empty basement with mats and mirrors. Jinho was alone. He was dressed in a simple workout uniform, and without his expensive suit, he seemed younger and more approachable. The lesson was simple and harsh. The first rule, he said, looking at her directly. Trust no one, including me. Always have a backup plan. He taught her simple things. How to check if someone was following you. How to change on the go. How to use burner phones and encrypt messages with a simple code. How to hold keys in your hand to use them like brass knuckles. How to hit where you're most vulnerable when there's no other way out. Ayla listened and tried to remember everything. She was a quick learner. Her hands, accustomed to precise movements with a knife, quickly grasped the basics. During the break, they sat on the mats, drinking water. Why are you doing this? She asked. To teach me personally. You probably have people who could do that. Jinho looked at the water bottle in his hands. Because I know what it's like to be thrown into this ocean without knowing how to swim. I don't want you to drown because of me, and... He paused. I like your intelligence. You learn quickly. It was the first direct praise. Ayla felt warmth spread across her cheeks. These lessons weren't just instructions. They were hours spent alone, where they discussed not only safety, but also life. Where he gradually ceased to be a frightening mafioso and became Jinho, a man with his own difficult history. One day he called her and said, Tomorrow you will need a business suit. You will accompany me to a meeting. As whom? Ayla asked in surprise. Why, as my consultant on matters of aesthetics and hospitality. Don't worry, just listen and watch. The next morning, a car picked her up. Jinho was waiting inside. He glanced at her. She was wearing a smart dark blue suit, looking composed and professional. Good. He nodded approvingly. The meeting took place in the conference room of an expensive hotel. Jinho represented the interests of a chain of legal laundries that was his business. His partner was a gray-haired Japanese man, the owner of a chain of hotels. Ayla sat silently, as Jinho had requested, and watched, and she saw him in a completely new light. He wasn't a mafioso threatening someone in a dark alley. He was a brilliant negotiator, a smart and far-sighted businessman. His arguments were clear, his logic inexorable. He spoke calmly, confidently, and the Japanese listened with respect. After the meeting, when they left the hotel, Jinho asked, Well, what do you think? You see, you're a completely different person when you do this, Ayla said. You inspire confidence, respect. He smiled his rare, barely noticeable smile. That's my real job. Everything else is a necessary evil, a means of protection. That evening, he took her to dinner, to an expensive restaurant, at a social event. He introduced her to his colleagues and partners as Mademoiselle Ayla, my consultant. No one asked unnecessary questions. She saw the way they looked at him, with apprehension, but also with respect, and she began to understand the complexity of his situation. He wasn't just a gangster, he was a leader, caught between legitimate business and the shadow world that had spawned him. After dinner, they sat at the rooftop bar of a skyscraper. The city lay below, glittering with thousands of lights. The tension of the day had subsided, and a relaxed silence hung between them. "Thank you for having me today," Ayla said. "It was an eye-opening experience." "You held up well," Jinho replied. "You have a knack for reading people. Did you notice how nervously Tanaka's assistant's hand twitched? That helped me apply pressure at the right moment." She smiled, pleased that her observations had been helpful. "I've always dreamed of my own little restaurant," she said suddenly, not quite sure why. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the dizzying heights and proximity to it. Small, sweet, where I could cook what I love, where people would come not for the pomp, but for the good food. Jinho looked at her, listening. "Why not? You now have startup capital." "Yes, but it's scary. The responsibility. I'm afraid of failure." "Everyone's afraid," he said quietly. He turned to her, his face serious. "You know, I was into cooking when I was younger, too." Ayla couldn't hide her surprise. "Is it true?" "Yes. My grandmother ran a small diner. I helped her after school. I liked the order. Precise recipes. You put in the ingredients, follow the steps, and the result is there. Predictable and delicious." He chuckled, looking at his glass. "But my family was different. My father thought that was a splurge. He said a man should do real work, strong work. So I chose strong work." There was a slight, lingering bitterness in his voice. It was the most personal thing he had ever shared with her. "Do you regret it?" she ventured to ask. He looked at the city lights for a long time. "Sometimes, when I'm tired. But regret is also a luxury. My path has been chosen, and I will not deviate from it." There was no self-pity in his words, only acceptance. And in that moment, Ayla realized she was seeing the real him, the man who once dreamed of simple things but was forced to don the mask of an iron leader. And her heart sank with a strange tenderness for him. The idyll ended as abruptly as it had begun. Jinho became even busier and more tense. He canceled their next meeting, citing urgent matters. Ayla felt uneasy. She went to the market to buy fresh herbs for the restaurant. While she was choosing mint, she overheard two men talking at a nearby stall. They spoke quietly, but one name made her wary. "Jinho is too confident. Park won't forgive him for that humiliation. Tomorrow, when he goes to the meeting at the port, the perfect place. No witnesses, nothing." Ayla froze, icy terror gripping her body. She couldn't see the men's faces, but their tone left no doubt. They were planning murder. Without thinking about the consequences, she dropped her bag and ran. She ran out into the street, jumped aside, and with trembling fingers, dialed Jinho's number. "What happened?" he answered immediately, hearing her ragged breathing. They're planning to attack you tomorrow, at the port, when you're on your way to the meeting." She blurted out everything in one breath. There was a short, ringing pause on the other side. "Who are they?" "I don't know. Two men at the market. They mentioned Pak, your name. Where are you now?" His voice became sharp and collected. "At the Central Market. Go home. Now. Lock the door. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll call you back." She obeyed. The entire walk home was a blur. She sat on the hallway floor, hugging her knees, shaking. She had just plunged headlong into his world, and that world had tried to destroy him. And she, by chance, found herself in the path of that bullet. 2 hours later, he called. "You're right. My people checked some things. Pak really is planning a sortie." "Thank you, Ayla. You saved my life." "What are you going to do?" she asked, still unable to stop shaking. "What do they usually do? I'll set an ambush. It'll be a massacre." "No!" she exclaimed, not expecting such abruptness. "But you said your real job is a legitimate business. A massacre at the port will attract the police. Attention! It will harm you." He paused, considering her words. "Do you have an idea?" The idea came to her suddenly. Crazy, but brilliant in its simplicity. "They're waiting for you at the port? Then don't go there, but make them think you're coming. Send an empty car with your driver, and be somewhere else at an important meeting with journalists. Create an alibi. And when they attack the empty car, they'll be the ones looking like fools, and Pak will be disgraced, without suffering any physical losses. Humiliation is worse than death for him. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Brilliant," he finally said, and there was genuine admiration in his voice. "Absolutely brilliant. You think not like a soldier, but like a strategist." They worked out the details together. Jinho used his resources to spread disinformation and organize a fake motorcade. Ayla helped with the psychological side, how best to stage the whole thing so that Park would look like a complete idiot in the eyes of his own people. The plan worked flawlessly. Park's men attacked Jinho's armored but empty car at the port, while Jinho himself was giving an interview to a business magazine downtown. Park's failure was devastating. His authority was undermined, and Jinho emerged from the situation unscathed and with a strengthened reputation as a cunning and invulnerable player. That evening, he came to her home again. He stood at the threshold of her modest apartment, a new fire burning in his eyes. "We did it," he said. "Together!" He entered the apartment. Usually reserved and cold, he was now filled with a strange pent-up energy. Victory and the realization of how close he had come to death mingled within him. "I have to tell you something," he began, looking at her so intently it took her breath away. "All these years, I saw people as tools, pawns. Weakness is to be exploited. I built my empire on that, and I thought that's how it should be." He took a step towards her. "And then you came along, with your foolish, reckless offer to bring me lunch, with your fear, which didn't break you, with your mind, which proved sharper than my best advisors. You changed everything." Ayla stood there, unable to move, listening to his words. Her heart was pounding somewhere in her throat. "I don't know what it is," he admitted quietly, "but I know that when I heard your voice on the phone, trembling with fear, yet warning me, I realized there's something more important than power, more important than money." He stood very close. She felt the warmth radiating from him. "I'm not asking for anything. Your world and mine, they shouldn't intersect. But I want you to know, you're the only person I trust. Truly." Ayla looked into his eyes and saw not a mafioso, not a leader, but simply a man. A tired, lonely man who found support in her. "I know," she whispered, "and I trust you." She didn't know which of them made the first move. But the next moment, he was already hugging her, and her arms were wrapped around his neck. Their lips met in a long, tender kiss that contained everything: gratitude, fear, hope, and an understanding of the impossibility and necessity of what was happening between them. They didn't become a couple in the classic sense. Their worlds were too different, too dangerous for each other. But a new, fragile, yet strong bond formed between them. Ayla used part of the money to rent a small space for her restaurant. Jinho helped her with the legalization and contracts, but kept a low profile. He was her quiet investor and chief advisor. He never visited her at the restaurant in public. But sometimes, late at night, when the place closed, he'd come in through the back door. They'd sit at a table in the kitchen, drink tea and talk. He'd tell her about his business problems. She'd tell him about difficulties with suppliers. They were a team. He was her patron and quiet, invisible support. She was his chief advisor, the only person with whom he could be himself, without masks and armor. They found their balance, between light and shadow, between her dream of a simple life and his complex reality. It wasn't a fairy tale. They didn't have a guaranteed happy future. But they had a present built on trust, respect, and a quiet, deep affection that was stronger than fear and rational argument. And as they sat in the semi-darkness of the closed kitchen, their hands lying side by side on the table, almost touching, a silent promise. A promise to be close, no matter what their worlds were. 3 months had passed since the opening of Uyut, Ayla's small but rapidly growing restaurant. All these weeks, Jinho had been her shadowy patron. He never showed up during opening hours, but his invisible presence was felt in everything, in the impeccable work of the suppliers, the lack of inspections from the sanitary authorities, the respectful silence of the local hooligans. They saw each other late at night, after the last customer had left and Ayla had locked the door. He would come through the back door, always alone, wearing simple dark clothes and they would sit at a corner table in the kitchen, drinking the herbal tea she made especially for him and talking. These conversations became a relief for Jinho and for Ayla, a lesson in understanding the complex and dangerous world she had entered. One evening, while disassembling the dishwasher, Ayla found a small, flat, chewing gum-like object stuck to the inside wall. She didn't immediately realize what it was: a plastic casing, a tiny microphone, a bug. An icy hand squeezed her heart. She dropped the object, and it clattered to the tiled floor. She stood there, unable to move, staring at the tiny device that signaled their private world had been disturbed. She didn't call. She waited for him to arrive. When he entered, taking off his jacket, she silently pointed to the floor where the wiretap lay, neatly wrapped in a napkin. Jinho's face turned stony. He picked up the napkin and examined the device without a hint of surprise. "New, with remote control and recording capability," he said dispassionately. "They installed it today. Did you run the dishwasher?" No, Ayla managed to say. "I just finished packing." "Good. So they don't know we found her." "Who are they?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter who. What matters is why. They want to know if the restaurant is connected to me. They're looking for my weakness." He walked over to the window, pulled back the edge of the curtain, and looked out at the deserted night street. "They found you, Ayla. Now you're a target." He turned to face her. There was no fear in his eyes. There was a cold, honed fury. "We won't close the restaurant. It would look like an admission of guilt. But the rules are changing. Starting tomorrow, my man will be working here. A waiter. He'll be keeping an eye on you. I don't want anyone to... because of me. It's not because of you." His voice was sharp, almost angry. He forced himself to calm down. "It's because of me. You've become part of my defense, my rear. If they get to you, they get to me. I can't let that happen." For the first time, he spoke to her not as a partner or a woman he cared about, but as a strategic asset. And there was nothing offensive about it. It was the harsh truth of their world. "What are we going to do?" she asked, approaching him. "First, we give them what they want. Find out who they are." He put the wiretap back in the napkin and tucked it into his pocket. "And then I'll figure it out." He put his arm around her shoulders, his touch both gentle and firm. "Don't be afraid. As long as I'm alive, nothing will happen to you." But she heard more than just a promise in his words. She heard a warning. Her safe haven, her comfort, was no longer a safe place. It had become another battlefield in his fight. A new waiter named Kim arrived the next day. He was young, slender, smiling, and incredibly efficient. The customers adored him. Ayla, knowing the truth, could hardly hide her tension. Kim was Jinho's eyes and ears, and if necessary, his fists. Jinho told her to act as usual. Talk on the phone about orders, the menu, deliveries. Sometimes she even complained about imaginary problems, hoping those listening would buy it. Meanwhile, Jinho started his machine. He knew that simple surveillance wasn't enough. He needed to force the enemy to act, to make the first move. A week later, he brought her a small Bluetooth headset. "Put this on tomorrow morning, and obey my commands. What will happen? We're going hunting." That morning, as soon as Ayla opened the restaurant and began preparing for lunch, Jinho's calm voice rang in her ear. He was somewhere nearby, on the line. "Go to the window. Pretend to adjust the curtain. Look around the street. Do you see the gray van across from the pharmacy?" Ayla looked. "Yes. There they are, 2 of them. Kim's going to go out now, supposedly for cigarettes. He'll distract them. In the meantime, I'll check to see if anyone else is around." Ayla watched as Kim, whistling, crossed the street and disappeared into the drugstore. She noticed the van's window roll down slightly, and someone inside was clearly watching him. Jinho's voice was in her ear again. "Second post, on the roof of the building opposite. A sniper, but he's not for shooting, he's for observation, so they're still just gathering information." Ayla felt a shiver run down her spine. A sniper, on the rooftop across from her restaurant. The world outside her window suddenly became hostile and full of hidden threats. "Now, Ayla, do this," Jinho continued. Pick up the phone and pretend to call the supplier. Say it loudly and clearly. Listen, about that shipment of truffles. Tell Mr. Jinho I can't accept them in that condition. Tell him to call me back about it. Ayla understood. It was a decoy. She dialed a random number and spoke the required phrase into the receiver, trying to sound natural. About an hour passed. Ayla was setting the tables, her hands shaking. Suddenly, Jinho's voice in the headset became sharp. But contact. One is coming out of the van. He's heading towards you. Kim, get ready. Ayla, don't resist. Give him what he asks for. The door to the restaurant opened. A man in a jacket, as nondescript as his van, entered. He approached the counter. Ayla, chef? Yes. I've been instructed to give you something from Mr. Lee. He placed a thick envelope on the counter. He asked for it to be delivered personally. Ayla silently took the envelope. The man nodded and left as quickly as he had appeared. Lee, Jinho said into the headset, satisfaction lacing his voice. I thought so. The sly old fox. He wants proof of our connection so he can blackmail me. Don't open the envelope. It contains money, and most likely, another wiretap. Now we know who we're dealing with. The hunt was over. The prey had been caught. But Ayla knew this was only the beginning. Lee now knew of her existence. The game of cat and mouse had reached a new level. Chapter 13, The Price of Protection. That same night, Jinho came to her. He was gloomy and focused. Lee won't stop. He's realized you're my weak spot. He'll put pressure on you. Through the restaurant. Through you, personally. What are we going to do? Ayla asked, feeling fear rising in her throat again. I'll talk to him. No! She grabbed his arm. It's dangerous. He might set an ambush. He's not a fool. Open confrontation is not beneficial to either of us. This will be a conversation. But I need you to do something. What? Disappear for a few days. Close the restaurant. Say there's a problem with the plumbing. Leave town. Go to that lake house you told me about. I'll give you the address and the keys. Don't tell anyone. Not your friends. Not your coworkers. Ayla looked at him, and the full meaning of his request sank in. He was preparing to go to the battlefield. And to lead her, he needed to be sure she was safe. Okay, she agreed. I'll leave. He pulled her toward him and hugged her tightly. His embrace was a fortress, but now she felt the walls of that fortress shaking under the pressure from outside. I'll fix everything, he whispered into her hair. I promise. The next day, Ayla announced a sudden renovation and left. Jinho went to meet Lee. It took place in neutral territory, in a tea house owned by a third neutral party. Lee was older than Jinho, with gray temples and intelligent, cunning eyes. Jinho, it's good to see you. It's a shame we're meeting under these circumstances. You created these circumstances yourself, Lee. Why did you interfere with my people? To the people? I heard she's just a cook, a talented one, but... A cook? Could it really be the great Jinho is so attached to some cook? Jinho didn't flinch. He had expected such attacks. She's my investment. I've invested time and money in her restaurant, and I won't tolerate anyone damaging my property. Property? Lee chuckled. Interesting property. They say you spend all your evenings there. I love good food. Unlike you, I have taste. The tension in the air thickened. They both knew they weren't talking about food. I'm proposing a deal, Elle said, sipping his tea. Leave her, publicly. Hand her restaurant over to someone else. And I'll leave her alone. Because, insurance for a place like this is unreliable. There might be a fire. Or some other disaster. It was a direct threat. Jinho slowly placed his cup on the table. Here's my offer, Lee. Get out of my business. Take your rats out of my restaurant. And if anything happens to Ayla or Cozy, I'll blame it on you. And then I'll come for you personally. Not for your business. Not for your people. For you. Do you understand? He spoke quietly, but every word was like sharpened steel. The smile vanished from Lee's face. He realized Jinho wasn't bluffing. He was prepared for escalation, but not for the all-out war Jinho was proposing. You're risking everything because of one girl, Elle hissed contemptuously. Jinho corrected him. I'm defending my own, and my decision is law. Last warning, Lee. He stood up and walked out without looking back. He knew he had probably just signed a contract for himself and Ayla, the verdict. But he had no choice. There was nowhere to retreat. The price of protecting her was higher than he had imagined. It was the price of his own peace of mind and, perhaps, his empire. But looking at her frightened face in his memory, he knew he had no other choice.